Welcome back to Hilaal Live. Now, it'll take 4.5 months to clear the backlog at the Durban harbour. This is according to Transnet, where about 63 vessels are still anchored and waiting to be processed. Transnet Port Terminals, which manages the Durban container terminal, says it has already lost close to 160 million rand since September and is likely to lose more. The financial losses are insignificant to Transnet, which makes about 70 billion rand in annual revenue, but the congestion at the ports is seen as a serious challenge that requires urgent attention and oversight from the government because it affects South Africa's fiscal position, trade balance, and economic growth. Joining us now to discuss this from a trucking perspective, I'd like to welcome Gavin Kelly, who is the Road Freight Association CEO. Mr. Kelly, good day, and thank you so much for joining us here on Hilaal Live.
Good afternoon to you and good afternoon to your viewers.
Mr. Kelly, I want to start off with Umhlatuzi and the local municipality there because I saw a report this morning, and of course, off air we were talking about it with regards to the truck congestion on the N2 highway. And this is a serious problem, isn't it?
Look, it's a huge problem. And the reason why it's a problem isn't just because our trucks are standing there and we want our trucks to move. The problem is really around why are they standing there? And that's where the introspection and the real research needs to be done. Richards Bay was developed in the early 1970s for one specific type of commodity, and that was coal. And a terminal was designed, and it was called the Richards Bay Coal Terminal, which, we love acronyms in South Africa, so it's called RBCT. And this was going to move coal from Mpumalanga, the Ermelo region, and the various mines around there, down through Mpumalanga, through northern KwaZulu-Natal to the port of Richards Bay at a, first of all, far reduced rate in terms of tariff of moving the coal, and secondly, in large volumes into a dedicated port that would load this coal onto ships and get it out speedily, efficiently, and sustainably. Somewhere along the line, and I heard you saying earlier on that Transnet Port Terminals, or Transnet, whichever of the two it is saying, well, we lost 161 billion in September, or whatever the case was, and, we're not really worried. The problem is this, is that Richards Bay was built to export coal to the world. It wasn't built to export coal to somebody down the road in KZN. It's built to sell it around the world. Now the line that moves the coal from Mpumalanga to Richards Bay is operating at less than 50% capacity. It was built to take 80 million tons a year. It's less than 40 million tons as we speak and dropping. But the mines and the country is selling coal to people outside of South Africa, and it has to get to the port no matter what. And the only alternative is trucking, because you're not going to put it onto a plane and fly it down there unless that's, if money is not an issue, you can fly it down. So the only other alternative in bulk is road transport. So now we have thousands of trucks plying between Mpumalanga and the coal mines in the port of Richards Bay. It's a couple of hundred a day, but it's thousands over a month that are trying to get this coal out. And they're trying to get it along a road network that can't sustain them. Many of those roads were built in the 60s and 70s, weren't built for either the number of vehicles using those roads or the masses, the weights of those vehicles, but nothing to do with overloading. Then they try to get into a port that has a narrow entrance that wasn't built for hundreds of trucks a day. It was built to take coal by rail, and there's a terminal dedicated for that. There's everybody else trying to get in and out of the port. So now you have these queues of trucks standing outside and inside the port trying to get in and out. And if you're a truck operator, a truck company, your truck has to keep moving. That's how you make money. Well, that's how you generate revenue, how you make the money to keep your business going. And everyone wants to make a profit for a business. You can talk about exorbitant profits in a different discussion. But exorbitant profits here, trying to keep moving. So today we have these trucks standing, it's costing everybody money, and the businesses are not going to be able to sustain these sorts of delays. Hopefully that kind of wraps it up in a nutshell for you.
Mr. Kelly, Transnet's woes. It's kind of overtaken Eskom now as probably the one CEO that is hurting this economy. And now, of course, entering the festive season, we're close to that being over 4.5 weeks away. It's sitting there with those ships, and the trucks, of course, can't make its money because, as you mentioned, the trucks are right now South Africa's only route of transportation, getting goods from the coast into the inland areas. This is another major problem, isn't it? Because it just seems that when the timelines are given by the Transnet leadership, they're saying we can only clear the backlog by worst case scenario March next year. That's 3 months lost, 3 months of revenue that so many stakeholders in the supply chain are going to lose.
Yeah, it's an intricate coordination and collaboration between various entities that play a role in the supply chain. That sounds like a political statement, but let me try and unpack that for you. The reason why we are where we are is because the rail network has collapsed. There's no other fundamental causal reason why we are where we are. Our ports are designed around moving cargo through exporting or importing through various modes of transport. And the transport that worked for us for many years was a collaboration, a symbiotic relationship between road and rail. And rail has collapsed. And now everybody is running to road to pick up the lost loads, to get these loads moving, which is great. If you're in the road freight industry, you think, well, there's tons more work for you. But along with that has come all of these queues and these delays, which really frustrate. The bottom line is this: we need rail to do what it needs to do. So in the ports of Durban, where there are masses of containers, slightly different to the port of Richards Bay. Yeah, there are some quays on the one side, some wharves that move containers, but Richards Bay, by and large, is a bulk ore or a bulk material type of port, like wood chips and those sort of things, or coal, manganese ore, whatever those cases may be. So the ports are designed to move efficiently, and I use that term in inverted commas because obviously efficiently is not the word we can use right now, but are built to efficiently move these types of commodities through the port. It's not happening. So the CEOs of TPT or Transnet Port Terminals or Transnet should rightly be worried, because these problems didn't start last week on Monday, Friday, whenever this letter was written by TPT. This has been coming a long, long time. And the various industries, so the mining industry, agricultural industry, the fruit industry, you name it, have for years been saying, guys, we're heading for a crisis because productivity has been dropping over the years. We've seen it very clearly. We're heading for a crisis. We need to address this. We need to come up with sustainable solutions. It's a terrible South African saying, but sustainable solution means you bring in something that you can ensure is going to work for a long term. We now have the situation where, because we can't get our own exports, our own products through our own ports, and listen to what I'm saying, our own products through our own ports, we're now going to ports around us. We're going to ports like Maputo. We're not going through Richards Bay or Durban anymore. And our borders are becoming clogged. So our whole logistics system is starting to crumble because none of our borders or our ports were actually built to take the absolute pressures of road transport. And road transport's carrying the load for everyone. And how long we're going to be able to do that is questionable. But definitely, the CEO of Transnet, the CEO of TPT, who now want to talk to the Road Freight Association, have to find solutions that are going to ensure that as a country, as an exporter, as a major exporter, we can continue to generate revenue for the country.
Mr. Kelly, one final question. Transnet would say, well, the buck stops with the Department of Transport, and this is taking away public enterprises, which of course, has that stakeholding share within the state-owned enterprises. But how much now does the Transport Department and Ministry need to come to the party, given that we are 4.5 weeks away? And when you look at what Transnet is saying, that this can only be resolved probably early next year, there is a bit of a crisis in terms of when you look at the retailers and what they need to contribute towards the economy for those for the timeline that we have up until the festive season.
I think it's rich now to blame the Department of Transport. They have yet to be given all of these various aspects of Transnet. There has been talk that all those transport-related types of state-owned entities are going to fall under the Department of Transport. I don't think that those transfers of responsibility or power or accountability have all fully happened. I don't think the Minister of Transport has been given the opportunity to understand exactly what's happening everywhere. I'm sure she's being briefed. I'm sure she sees a lot of this discussion happening in the open media. But I don't think that that power has been fully transferred to the Department of Transport. So I think it's a bit rich, a bit unfair to start pointing fingers at the Department of Transport. They are inheriting huge backlogs and huge problems. The Department of Public Enterprise has had a 50% share, if not more, of the state-owned entities in terms of infrastructure, in terms of management. I think, if anything, those entities that ran the various bits and pieces of Transnet have shown very, very poor management, very poor judgment in terms of long-term planning. They have known what the causes are and haven't addressed them. So we're going to have a very, very tight couple of months. You hear horrendous stories of vessels standing off the port of Durban. And I think a number of different associations have spoken to the number of containers that are stuck between the vessels, the port, and getting out of the port. And there are figures running around like 70,000 containers. Retailers, a lot of the goods that was due to be sold over the so-called holiday period at the end of the year, where many retailers look forward to having a season when they can up sales and generate revenue. Lots of those goods are still sitting on the ships. They haven't cleared the ports. They're still due to be distributed around the country. And we've probably got less than a month of distribution time, because even in the road freight industry, we try to take our trucks off the road from about the 16th of December so that the roads are relatively quiet. There's still going to be delivery, so there's not going to be no trucks on the road. We try and bring the volumes down so that those who now travel to holiday destinations go home. There's so many people who travel home that those roads are not as full, as congested as they normally are. So I think you're quite right. I think the retailers are facing some really, really tough times if their goods are only going to get to them long after the season of a lot more money being around for spending has passed.
Yeah, no, definitely remains to be seen what's going to happen. But if that's the case, a very difficult festive season for those retailers. Mr. Kelly, thank you so much for joining us here on Hilaal Live.
Thank you so much.
That's Gavin Kelly, Road Freight Association CEO. After the break, I'll have your latest in news. Do stay tuned.